Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to be doing a brief stock analysis of a Lockheed Martin, and before I get started I just wanted to let you know that this is not necessarily going to be a deep dive into their financials, but more so me giving my opinion on the company and kind of general outlook for the industry. And for those of you who may not be familiar with them, they make a wide range of products for the US military. They make military helicopters as well as a wide array of military aircraft, as well as missiles and some land vehicles. You can go ahead and ignore the picture of the submarine there, but you get the main idea. So without further ado, let me get right into it. Here it is, ticker symbol LMT, and here's the 5-year chart. And we can see that at about 5 years ago, they were trading at $201, and at their recent high, just a few months ago, they were at $442. So over a 100% increase in the last 5 years. A pretty strong investment and growth seen there. And here, looking at their financials, we can see revenue increasing by a pretty steady amount year over year, as well as pretty steady earnings. And this predominantly comes from U.S. contracts with the U.S. military. And then here we see their quarter over quarter revenue and earnings for the last 4 quarters, and pretty much across the board in Q1, and you can't really see it here, but in Q2 earnings as well for 2020, you're seeing razor thin earnings pretty much across most industries, but Lockheed Martin relying on long-term contracts is not really being affected right now. Now I'm going to go over some of the bears and the bulls points by analysts at Morningstar. In the first positive point here I have is that Lockheed Martin's prime contractor role on the F-35, the largest weapon program in history, should deliver stable revenue for decades. And what that tells me is that there's zero chance for bankruptcy for at least 3 or 4 decades. Not that I would really be worried anyway, but this pretty much guarantees it. And then if we go into the second point, defense prime contractors operate in an acyclical business cycle, which I already referred to, meaning that they are pretty much protected in a recession or even in a depression. And then just the last point here is that the National Defense Strategy prioritizes missile development and missile defense, which Lockheed excels in. That's R&D as well as actually producing the missiles, and I do not even know of a big competitor that Lockheed has in this area. Now I also want to cover a couple of bearish points by the analysts at Morningstar, and I actually think this first point is pretty silly. And it's that Lockheed Martin depends on U.S. military funding for its sales, which is an inherently political and thus uncertain process. And uncertain process, sure, but political, they kind of have to be political. I mean, the U.S. military is the biggest in the world, so having them as their biggest client is kind of a sweet deal. An alternative would be selling the military products to China, which is even more political. So I'm not really sure that makes a whole lot of sense. And it can be an uncertain process because that's how government contracts can go. But uncertain process because it's political, I would completely disagree with, because they kind of have to because of the nature of the company. And then this next point, it's a pretty good one. It's that there is a risk that upstarts like SpaceX will threaten the incumbents' oligopoly, I believe that's pronounced, in space contracts. And I believe SpaceX is really only covering different things than Lockheed Martin right now. But as SpaceX grows, I'm sure they could get bigger contracts that really kind of go into Lockheed's territory. But it's the idea that a lot more startups will go into their territory and really take their market share. And then I also wanted to go over the research report overview here on Robinhood, and they have a wide economic moat, which I would completely agree with. Their competitors are really small, and they are by far the biggest in a way in their entire market for the US. But their economic moat may narrow as more startups, like we just talked about, do prop up and take some of their market share. And it's really hard to give them a fair value when looking at them long term. The U.S. political climate can shift pretty rapidly with a new presidential administration. If the next president really favors a big military, then they could continue to get really big contracts because they're pretty long term. So they'll be fine in the short term at least, but they want to get more and more contracts. And if there's a president that wants a smaller military, then they may suffer. And the stock price is going to decrease because there's less growth opportunity. But overall, I do see a lot of growth for decades to come. I've done a ton of other brief stock analysis videos very similar to this one, so be sure to come and check those out if you enjoyed. I'm actually doing a series right now of all the 30 companies in the Dow 30, so come and check that playlist out if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching, and subscribe for more content.